Hey guys and girls, it's Blackjack with 396 Guitars. We have the Iceman on the bench today. We did a whole bunch of work on some other stuff, and I try to do a little bit of work on this every day. We have some pots that we're going to mount in the guitar, volume, tone, and we have the pickups from the previous video. We're going to do some soldering today, but we're not doing the entire job. I'm going to explain as we go along, so let's get to work. Remember to dig what I'm doing, like and subscribe. So, back of the guitar, and all the wires coming out of here. This is our neck pickup. This is our bridge pickup, and you can see it's like a 5-wire bundle coming out of there. The other wires that you see here, the white, the black, the yellow, are from the 3-way switch. So the main thing that we're concentrating on today is picking our pots. These are 500K CTS pots. These are good quality pots. Do not skimp on pots. 500K, 250K, depends on your application. For this particular application, I'm using 500K. These should be pretty hot pickups, so I'm going with a little bit better. I shouldn't say better, because 250 and 500, it's not better or worse, they're just different. I am going off of a Seymour Duncan 2-humbucker, 2-volume, 1-tone, 3-way toggle switch diagram. Seymour Duncan has never let me down with wiring. I know basically how to do this, but I'm going to follow this map. So the first thing, mark your pots. Volume. I took a little black marker and put a V and a V, and tone. So we have 2 volumes and 1 tone. Volume 1, which is this one, and it's going to be the one closest to the opening cavity, or closest to the pickups in the cavity. This is the back of the guitar where the output jack would be. The first thing, it says to bend this lug, and it's going to receive, it's going to be soldered to the back of the unit, the back of the pot, and it's going to take a ground cable to the second volume. I have, by the way, my solder iron here is warming up, and it's a brand new one. The other one did not have Fahrenheit and Celsius. I like both of them to be able to dial in exactly when it depends on what you're doing. If you're working on the back of a pot, you do not want to be overheating that. You can damage the inside of it. So the first thing it says, bend that lug, and it's going to be in the guitar in this relation. So that lug needs to be bent over, and ultimately it will be soldered to the back of the pot, and there will also be a small wire that goes from here to the other volume pot. Now, we're not going to solder this part today, because normally I would get it mounted, which is what we're going to do. Then before you solder it to the back of this, you're going to solder the wire in, because it may or may not interfere. The heat will transfer, and when you got to put multiple things on one lug, it can be tricky. So every volume pot, or tone pot as it were, will come with a nut, a locking washer, and a flat washer. A lot of confusion out there. Where does the locking washer go? By the way, there's another nut down here. That nut stays on the shaft so that you can adjust on the face of the guitar. But as you're looking at the front of the guitar where the business end is, you can adjust how much thread actually goes through the body. I am pretty certain I'm going to have it all the way down. I had mounted some other pickups or other pots in here before, and they were even longer. They were every bit as long as not only the threads, but where the knob goes on it. Pretty sure this is gonna be where I need that to be. When you mount this in the cavity, you want the lock washer on there first. That grabs it and keeps it from spinning around in there. And there is a grippy side and a smooth side, but mostly it doesn't matter. Excuse me. So we're going to test fit it in there and run it all the way down. So lock washer, you got the pot, nut, and then the lock washer. This is tricky. You'll learn how to do this. And we're going to have just enough sticking through, and I was right. You want to orient it so that you'll be able to solder. You take the flat washer, not the lock washer, that goes on the face of the guitar, and it should leave just enough thread to grab the nut, or for the nut to grab the shaft. And then of course when the knob goes over this, these are split shaft. Sorry about my big head getting in the way. Make sure that you're oriented as straight as possible when you mount these, so that when you start to solder, they're oriented correctly. So that's how it looks. This one's hard to see because of all the wiring, but that's how it looks once it's in there. This one's going to face this way. The next one is going to face towards it, and this one is going to face that way too. Or I'm going to fit them. This one may face this way, and these two may face each other, depending on how I have to. That's probably more the way, but I'm going to flip them around. There's not a lot of room in this cavity. It's not like a Stratocaster where you have you flip the whole pick guard over and all your electronics are right there where you need to work on them. Come on, refocus for me. There you go. Thank you. Sorry about that. So that's one. We are going to tighten that because I really don't want it to be moving around. I believe these are 13s. They could be 12s. 13 will grab it. I want to keep it as straight as possible in the cavity, so try to hold it so that it can't move. And again, it's not a Harley Davidson. You want it snug because these things, I don't know why, but because you're constantly moving on that, winding on them, they will come loose, and that's the big mistake everybody makes when their knobs come loose. They just pop the knob off and grab a hold of it. Well, what you're doing is you're turning everything down in the cavity. So that's the next volume. And the next volume, same thing. It's supposed to get one of the lugs has to be bent back towards to be soldered to the back, and another ground cable from there to there. So I'm thinking that these two should be facing each other. I'm going to put the second volume and the tone facing each other. It should give me a little more room to finagle wires around in there. So knowing that this is the lug that we bent and is going to receive a ground and solder there. And by the way, all of this is going to be soldered in the cavity, not out of the cavity, because I want to do all of this and snip the wires to exact length, so there isn't a whole there's not enough room in here to carry a whole bunch of extra wire. So this one's tricky. This is even worse than doing a Les Paul. A Les Paul's hard enough. They've got 2 volumes and 2 tones, and their cavities are notoriously just big enough. Nut, locking washer, and before we do that, I want to bend that lug. These are not cheap pots, but they're not super expensive. You can get carried away and really spend a lot of money on pots. You don't need to, but don't get the cheapy ones from you know who. Get that bent down to where it's as close to, and for whatever you do, don't snap that ear off that all the lugs are attached to. It's brittle. Don't start reaming on it. Get it to where you think it will solder and catch. It should be touching, but that's kind of tricky to make happen because you're bending a lug over to solder to the back of the pot. And that is almost it. Not quite. Bear with me. I'm going to call that good. I'm going to call that good. It'll be close enough. Now, there's a second way to do that. I mean, if you don't want to bend these lugs and it doesn't seem like they're close enough that the solder is actually going to make that connection, you can put a little jumper wire. It's just added soldering, but this way works. I've done it this way for 100 years, and it works. Get it close. The solder will join those 2 pieces. In a perfect world, you want them touching, but I do not want to bend on that lug so much that it breaks off that control panel that it's holding it to. So, this is the second volume. Put it in the hole. Tip it over. Get your washer on there. Get it snugged, and then worry about positioning and which direction it's pointing in. You see how it turned? We don't want that. We want it straight. We want it pointing this way. The lug's oriented in this direction, so that this second volume and the tone, the lugs are going to be pointing at each other. I'm going to try that. I'm pretty sure that's the best way. This is the tricky part. You got to hold it and then actually tighten it down so it doesn't turn. It doesn't move on you. And it didn't. Beautiful. These are ready to take caps, knobs, as it were. And our tone. Volume. Volume. Tone. And yes, I Sharpied the hell out of them because you don't want to confuse yourself. I'm easily confused sometimes. Lock washer. And the whole. Yeah. See, none of the lugs on the tone pot need to be bent. We can solder them in place to whatever is going to receive to them or leave them. Let's get this one straightened out. Too far already. Get around there. I was watching a football game last night, and I won't tell you the heartache of blowing a 14-point lead and celebrating and doing all kinds of shenanigans in the end zone, thinking that you won the game before the clock stopped and ran out. And guess what happened? Those bleeping kids blew the game. And when I say kids, they're professionals, but in relation to the age of those people and me, they are kids, but they're getting paid professional money, and they blew that game. All right, everybody with me so far? Volume, tone. They're placed. I think I got plenty of room. Got our lugs bent. Now, what we are actually going to solder today, the original pickups had a sheath ground and a center wire coming out. The center wire went to the lug. The sheath got soldered to the back of the pot. I don't like that. It's old school. People still do it. People still use them. But once I realized that the resistance had blown off the charts on those old humbuckers, that's when I decided if I'm going to do this, get some new pickups. And the resistance is much better on these. I've never seen resistance so high on pickups. So I digress. These are modern hot rodded Seymour Duncan, and they've got 5 micro wires coming out. Well, 4 micro wires and a bare ground. So what we have to do, according to Seymour Duncan, is solder the red and the white together, thusly, and tape them off. I wish I had some really small heat shrink, but I don't. So let me get my solder iron. It's up and running. It's heated. I'm not 100% sure it's at the temperature that I want it to be at. I'm shooting for 650 Fahrenheit and about 350 Celsius. For these little tiny wires, that's more than enough. And you should be able to just, we're going to tin, this is a brand new iron, so I'm going to tin the end of it and let it sit for a few minutes. And then we'll be right back. So stand by. Okay, so we are back with, we didn't really go anywhere, but so red and white, and I know it's hard for the camera to pick up on that, but you have black, green, and bare. Red and white get soldered together, and we're going to bend that over and just put a piece of tape on it. Now, soldering is an art form, and you have to have everything laid out and ready to go when you're doing it. And my advice is learn on something that doesn't matter many times before you get to actually soldering on something, and be able to look really closely at it while you're doing it. Because you can burn something very quickly. Now I'm going to hope that my big fat head, why do I have a piece of wood here? Because I'd rather burn the wood. You tin your iron tip, clean it quickly, and it is tinned. You're going to apply heat to your component. In this case, it's just a couple of wires. Apply some heat, let it sink in. Let the solder do the rest. That's it. We just soldered those 2 pieces of wire together. And after every application, you tap it in. There's that little yellow thing right there that the camera's picking up. That's a sponge, and it's wet. You just, and then a Brillo pad. It will remain tinned. This particular iron goes, when I set it back in the holder, there's a sensor in there that picks it up and keeps the temperature from going too high to burn, and it'll end up burning the tip. Now, once you've soldered your thing, let it cool off for a minute and check it. Make sure that it actually is soldered together, because sometimes, yeah, that's good. That's a nice solder. I'm going to bend it over and just tape it off. And I know that's counterintuitive, but like I said, Seymour Duncan has never let me down, and I have actually done that procedure many times following pickup Seymour Duncan's directions, changing pickups. After a while, you get used to doing a bunch of them, and you know exactly what you're doing. But like I said, when you're going to start soldering, you've never done it before, learn on a wooden bench somewhere where you're not going to catch anything on fire. Don't have your dirty underwear hanging around where you're going to catch it on fire and have to call 911. Little tiny piece of tape. That's all you need. And all you're doing is making sure that this connection never ever touches anything else. Just going to wrap a little tape around it. They make really tiny, small shrink wrap. I just don't have any. Mine are just a little bit too big. And if you do it right, it will stay forever. That is one solder joint done. Now we're going to do the other one, which is over here. Now this one's quite a bit longer, and I don't want all that excess wire in there. Stand by while I see exactly where these have to go, and then I'm going to snip it down to size. Stand by. So we had to cut off about that much wire because we just didn't need it. It was going to be way too much hanging out in the cavity. Our solder iron is back up and running. Same exercise, red and white get soldered together. 10 hour. It should have stayed tinned, and it did. We're just going to touch ever so slightly, heat up those little micro wires. I hope my head's not in the way. And that's that. And we are nice and clean, and it's going to stay tinned. Now, I hope my head wasn't in the way too much. Nice little solder joint. Takes a second. I have the point tip on there, and I usually use a flat one. I don't like the point tip, but when you're doing these little lugs, the round holes, you put the tip right in the hole, and it heats up the whole lug beautifully. But then you got to change out the thing when you're doing regular bare wire like this. So bend it down. Same exercise. We're going to cut off a little piece of black tape. I have been trying to do a solder video showing at least some aspects of soldering. And this Paul Stanley guitar, the Iceman, is the next victim up that I'm doing some soldering and rewiring. So I'm basically doing a whole rewire job on this thing. New pickups, new pots, new switch, everything. And I don't know how much the camera's going to pick up, but I'm hoping that you understand what part of what we're doing. To reiterate, it's important that if you haven't soldered before, don't start trying to rewire your own guitar. Get on the bench, put a big piece of wood, go somewhere where you can plug in have your solder station ready. A big piece of wood, will not catch on fire with a solder iron. And solder different things together, different metals, wires, different type of things, and do some research. But you have to learn how to do it before you apply it in a guitar situation. Do we want to attempt to solder? Because my head's going to be right in the way if we try to solder those two lugs to the back of the pot. And I need to change and use a different solder tip. There are a lot of different solder tips that you can use. This one is a pointy one. There are some that are flat. There are some that are really wide. There are some that are round. So yeah, it's a lot to take in. It's not like welding. It's not as bad as welding, but yeah, it's different. I'm going to wait because I want to do that all together. We are at the point where we're ready to solder everything in there and start testing and tapping on the pickups. But for today's video, we've shown you enough how to mount the pots. These are the pickup wires. I had to cut a little bit off, bare it on, by the way, bearing off these micro wires and pulling try to find a stripper that's small enough to do those wires. Yeah, I got to get another tool. But that's where we're at, and we're getting there slowly but surely. So thanks for hanging in there with us. We're going to put another video up soon. This guitar being soldered together completely. It's Blackjack with 396 Guitars. Thanks for hanging in there. And remember, if you dig what I'm doing, like and subscribe. We'll talk soon.